Tonight, TikTok lawmakers have just 2 more weeks to cut a deal that would avert another government shutdown. One of the congressmen on the negotiating committee joins us tonight. Also, former White House aide has written a new book here that gives a behind-the-scenes look at the White House, the chaos, the cast of characters of President Trump. The author joins RFL. And we also look at the deep freeze that has blanketed our area and a big part of the country, and also a preview of the Super Bowl. We've got something for everybody this evening. Good night, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Well, here we go again. In just 15 days, we could see the government shut down yet again. And before you say no way, no how, remember the guy who's got to sign off on the deal. Enough said. It sure sounds like we are back to square one, with the wall remaining, of course, the sticking point. Just listen to Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
There's not going to be any wall money in the legislation. What did he say today? It doesn't matter what Congress does. I knew that he wanted it all to himself. I mean, oh, really? A president who wants to have Congress be completely irrelevant in how we meet the needs of the American people? No, come on.
President Trump was asked about Speaker Pelosi's comments, and of course he had something to say.
If there's no wall, it doesn't work. She's just playing games. So if there's no wall, it doesn't work.
Okay, so the president also commented on the 17-member bipartisan committee that is trying to come to an agreement. Now, they met yesterday for the first time. Again, your commander-in-chief.
I'm not waiting for this committee. And I've told a lot of people I don't expect much coming out of the committee because I keep hearing the words that we'll give you what you want, but we're not going to give you a wall. And the problem is, if they don't give us a wall, it doesn't work.
Oh, so we have the optimistic coming out of D.C. so far. Now, go over to the Senate, where you have the Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, and he weighed in with this.
I don't like shutdowns. I don't think they work for anybody, and I hope they'll be avoided. I'd be open to anything that we could agree on a bipartisan basis that would make them pretty hard to occur again.
All right. Well, our next guest, he's on the committee trying, the key word there, to avert another shutdown. Congressman Henry Cuellar. He's a Democrat from Texas, and he's his district right on the border. Before we get to the status of the negotiations and some of the horse trading that's going on, help my audience and myself here. We're here on the East Coast. We've heard the different numbers thrown around, what the president wants versus what Democrats are offering. I've seen you passionately from the floor of the House say a wall is not the answer, penny wise, pound foolish, and all the others. Separate rhetoric from reality for us. You've done a lot of man hours on the border. You've spoke to border agents, you spoke to DHS, your constituents. What's getting lost in this whole debate? Why is a wall an unworkable solution on the border?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the border. When they call this a crisis area, let me give you the reality about the border, because I live here. I don't just come in for a few minutes. I'm here every week. A border, first of all, in the border, we have about $1.3 billion of trade with Mexico every single day. That's over $1 million every single minute. We also get every year about 19 million Mexicans that come over to the United States to come spend money as tourists. That's one out of 4 international visitors are from Mexico. Last time we looked at the numbers, they spend over $20 billion in the U.S. So the border is a very dynamic area here, and we got to understand why the border is important. When they talk about crisis, keep in mind that if you look at FBI stats, the border is safer than most other places across the nation. The national crime rate for murder is 5.3 murders per 100,000. Most of the cities here are 2, 3, 4 murders per 100,000. So we're below the murder rate. In fact, Washington, D.C. is about 4 or 5 times more dangerous than my hometown using the FBI statistics. So now the president says, I want to stop drugs from coming into the United States. Well, if you look at the latest DEA report or the CBP reports, most drugs are going to come 2 ways. One, through ports of entry. So if you built a wall, it's not going to stop the drugs from coming in through the ports. Even that drug case in New York, what are they saying? The bad guys are saying we use ports of entries, we use submarines, we use fast boats, so a wall is not going to stop them from doing that. Then the other thing is, oh, by the way, the Chinese drugs that come in, how do they usually come in? Post office, the mail that we have. So therefore, we got to be smart on, if we want to stop drugs, let's look at it, a smart, effective way of doing that. Finally, the last thing. In 2001, Border Patrol stopped about 1.6 million, apprehended 1.6 million people. The last year, it was about 303,000 people at the southern border. So that's less than one quarter. It's 1/4 now than what it used to be at a highlight. And if you look at most people that are here illegally, look at the latest DHS numbers. 67% of them came through a legal permanent visa. So you put a wall, what's going to happen? They will go around, they either fly in with a legal visa, they'll drive through a bridge, or they'll be on a ship and then overstay their visas. And by the way, did you know that most of the visa overstays, you know where they're from? Canada. Now, I'm not saying put a wall at the northern border, but most visa overstays are Canadians. So again, we got to look at how do we secure the border. I live on the border. I want to secure the border. And if you think the wall is the only way to secure the border, it's a 14th century solution to a 21st century problem that we have. Finally, you spend billions of dollars on the wall, and all I need is $100, buy myself a good ladder, and people will be able to jump that fence very quickly.
Well, let's talk the politics of this, because we're staring down the barrel of another possible shutdown. I know most people think nobody could be crazy enough to do this twice, but I know I heard you and other members of this 17-person bipartisan conference committee optimistically talk about how day one went and where you think that you guys could find some common ground. That said, the president, he said he puts your odds at less than 50-50. He wants a wall. He doesn't want anything short of a wall, and he doesn't want it with a chump change. He wants real money behind it, or he's going to shut it down all over again. Why should we have any optimism that you guys can come up with something that he's going to be willing to sign?
Well, I don't want to speak for the president, but the president has said one thing and then he'll do something else. As you remember, back before December 22nd, he was talking about signing the bill and moving forward. And now, of course, a little bit after that, he went up to $5.7 billion for this 14th century solution fantasy that apparently he and some other people have, called the wall. And he has said things and he has changed his mind. All I can do is focus on what we can control. I feel that as appropriators, Democrats, Republicans, House and Senate, if we focus on the bills between the House and the Senate, we can sit down and work on smart border security. I feel very confident. I can't speak for the president, but I feel among ourselves, the appropriators, as you know the old saying, there are Democrats in Congress, there are Republicans in Congress, and then there's appropriators. Appropriators by nature were deal makers, and will be willing to look at ways that we can come to an agreement. And both sides are not going to be 100%. The left is not going to be 100% happy. The right is not going to be happy. But I think if we can come up with a compromise that works on border security, that's smart, effective border security, that's what's in the best interest of the country.
Well, give me an idea, Congressman, speaking as a deal maker, what are the gives that you think the Democrats might be willing to swallow and still give on? And conversely, what do you think Republicans in the past that they've said no to might say yes now?
Well, again, I'm sorry I'm not going to negotiate here in public, but I will tell you, I've been on the phone with Democrats and Republicans already talking about this. I've been on the phone with experts, law enforcement, Border Patrol experts, and other folks. I've been on the phone with CBP folks talking about ways how we can solve this. And again, if we go and base it on facts and what works, and keep one thing in mind, the bad guys don't go out there and negotiate how they're going to pass the drugs and how they're going to smuggle or traffic people. They don't go take votes in Congress to see how they're going to do it. They make a decision and they say, we're going to put the drugs through this port of entry. We're going to go ahead and use this speedboat. We're going to do that. They do it on the spot. we have to be able to come up with a strategy and funding that's able to counter that fast-moving cartel strategy that they have. And if we don't, put the flexibility to be able to react to the strategies of bad guys, we're going to be behind every single step. And I don't think that's a way to address border security.
I know you guys are obviously focused on a deal that'll avert a shutdown and it'll also improve border security, but the idea of the family separations, the indifference on the part of the administration, the lies that they've told about this, I keep trying to remind people in the audience, imagine if it was your kid and you this happened to. This is outrageous. What, if anything, can be done to try and put these families back together?
I agree. I mean, I think it's beyond me. Anybody would think that it's good deterrence to separate their kids from the parents. And I've been told how some of this happened. I mean, even some of the insiders told me what happened. I mean, basically, they said, we're going to use zero tolerance. And they bring in a family. Then they tell the mom, hey, you're going to go to court and you're going to go testify, because crossing over the first time is a civil, it's a misdemeanor. The second time, third time, it becomes a felony. So they would take them over, and when they got back, their kids were gone. How can you do that to a family? It's just beyond me. So I'm hoping that as we talk about border security, we looked at how do we treat people with dignity and respect, and not separate a mother from their kids.
Finally, a political question. Part of our viewing area is represented by a freshman Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. Her group, the Justice Democrats, they've targeted you for a primary next year. There's a lot of positions all of a sudden that I would think would be unhelpful to elect Democrats nationally that are already being debated, whether it be the 70% tax cuts, Medicare for all. My point is, what's going behind? You don't even have to attach names to it in the cloakroom. These conversations where you guys, I'd imagine Democrats are saying, what are we doing here? Are we picking fights with ourselves? How surprised were you that a Democrat group is targeting you for a primary next year?
Well, it's not a Democrat group. It's a PAC that got created in 2016. It's a PAC that call themselves Democrats. I know my district, and I'm not going to let some outsider tell me how I should represent my district. So, again, we'll be ready. We'll win. And, again, I've seen this in the past, and we've been able to show the public what we're able to do. And it's unfortunately because I will say this, and I'm going to quote LBJ. LBJ said about this type of groups, he called these groups another name. He says, what's the difference between those type of groups and cannibals? And this is what President LBJ said. Cannibals don't eat their own. And this is what we're seeing from this PACs, this outsider PACs that come in and want to purify people and put them in the image that they think, that Democrats want to raise taxes to 70% or want to get rid of this and that. It's just not that way. That's not the practical representation we need to have in our district itself.
Congressman Cuellar, I appreciate a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Now, when we come back, a former White House aide with a new book out, and it's getting a lot of buzz. He'll join us. It's quite a story to tell. You'll hear it after this.